All right, guys. Well, welcome to the webinar, and we're happy to have you joining us. And Nomad Credit, along with Avanse, is very excited to share some great information for you about U.S. admissions, as well as loan options that you may have for that study abroad in the USA. So we are happy to have Avanse with us too. They'll have some great insights into loan options. And so before we do the admissions piece with Nomad, I'd like to introduce you to Avanse and Deval Patel, who is the head of product and channel for education loans at Avanse. Deval, if you'd like to just say a few words at the start.
Sure. Hi all, great welcome to today's webinar. I am Deval Patel, Head of Education Products and Channels at Avanse. Here to guide you in terms of financing requirements, and happy to answer all your queries and questions related to funding and funding related to studying abroad.
Right. Well, great. Thank you, Deval. So yeah, we will hear a lot more from him in a few moments, but for now we're going to dive into USA admissions. So today we're going to talk about how to select schools and what universities are looking for in their applicants, as well as how to evaluate your profile, and just some general information on the application process and the common errors associated with it. However, just wanted to introduce you a little bit to myself and Nomad Credit. So we are a company that has a founding team of recent U.S. university graduates, and my name is Nathan Treadwell, and I am a co-founder of Nomad Credit. And our main goal is just trying to lower the barriers to U.S. higher education for international students. Just for instance, I traveled abroad for quite some time and really gained a passion for the global economy and everyone coming together and being educated. And so that was one of the reasons I wanted to help start this company. And so we have all lived, worked, and studied in the U.S. and so far this year we will help 1,000 Indian students evaluate their university options for this year. So we're excited to help you as well, and Indian students as well as other international students. We have helped others too. So one of the things that we hear from a lot of students is, how do you select your schools? So outside of the top 10 or 20 ranked schools, ranking, while it does matter a little bit, it is not 100% all that matters. The reason for this is that ultimately, when you go to school, you're going to be hired after you graduate. And so employers don't really travel far to hire, as that's expensive. So they're going to look at the local universities that are near local universities that are near their companies to help save some time and money. And just remember that the U.S. is an extremely large country. It's bigger than India. And so it's important to know the local economies and who is hiring from schools in that area. So as I was saying, companies do hire from universities in their region. For instance, as an example, Arizona State, they are located in the desert in Arizona, and there's really nothing around in terms of big companies that might hire from them. However, Washington State University, while maybe slightly lower on a rankings list, is very close to Seattle, which has the headquarters of Amazon, which is $1 trillion company, as well as Microsoft. So as you can see, that's a pretty clear example of how it's important to be hired from a school that's near that university. Another thing to be aware of is rankings are affected by the amount of international students who apply and enroll. So sometimes if a lot of international students are going to a school, their ranking might be inflated. And as an example of this, there's a school like University of Texas Arlington, which rankings a bit inflated due to that international enrollment and less so due to actual job placement and academics of that university. And one of the most common rankings you'll see is the U.S. News ranking. And while that is a decent ranking to look at, they don't really factor in things like the ability to get a visa or be sponsored for an H-1B visa after you have graduated. So it's really important to look at schools that do have a good local economy around them, that have great OPT programs as well as H-1B visa opportunities in the area. So you'll want to look at universities that are located near major cities in the U.S., or if you're interested in a specific type of industry, that you are considering schools that are located in a region. For instance, tech jobs, the largest region in the U.S. that was great for tech jobs is the Pacific Northwest, and that would be cities like Seattle and Portland and San Francisco. But there are major cities throughout the U.S., so even if you are looking for tech, you don't have to be in that region. New York City is a great tech hub, as well as Chicago, and there are many major cities in the U.S., so that does offer plenty of opportunities to find one. And one thing to note is that the reputation of a U.S. school in India is not the same as that reputation in the U.S. So it's important to know how well known a school is in the U.S., as that is ultimately what's going to matter in terms of getting a job. And kind of along those veins, it is important to avoid popular Indian schools. So there are a few schools that a lot of Indians are very interested in applying to, and those schools know that, so they'll accept Indians at a very disproportionate rate. So this can lead to two issues. One, with getting a visa. The visa embassies are aware of the high rate of acceptance, so they do frown upon some of these schools a little bit, especially in southern India and the Hyderabad region, as well as it makes it difficult to get a job after school. It makes it harder to stand out if there are a lot of students that are all studying the same thing. So local companies in those areas might not sponsor H-1B visas because they'll have so many opportunities to give the OPT, and they can just continue hiring OPT jobs for 3 years, and then once the 3 years are up, they'll just find another OPT rather than spend the time to sponsor that H-1B, because the H-1B visa process is expensive for employers, so they really want to look for somebody that's standing out. And then lastly, just scholarships and assistantships will be a lot more competitive at these schools, just due to the quality of similar candidates. Scholarships are given to those that stand out, and it will be harder to do so. So we often get the question of, what are universities looking for in their applicant's profile? So there are three major aspects of the profile that are massively more important than any other. This is the language test, which is the IELTS or TOEFL. Some also do accept the PTE exam, but certainly the IELTS and TOEFL are the majority of what schools are accepting. If you're studying a graduate degree, a master's, MS degree, or an MBA degree, then a GRE or a GMAT exam score is massively important. And then they're also going to look at your CGPA or percentage, the marks that you received at your university. So universities do consider other aspects, such as a statement of purpose, your work experience, research papers, extracurriculars, etc. However, it's just not going to impact it as highly as your language test, your GRE, GMAT, or your CGPA and percentages. The reason for this is that universities have hard requirements, so it's hard for them to evaluate international student accolades, especially when everything has happened in a country that they're not too familiar with. So they'll default to the standardized exams and qualities. For instance, like a university knows what a 310 GRE score means. Unfortunately, they don't know what 2 years experience at a company that they've never heard of means. So they will default to making sure that the standardized test, the language test, as well as your marks are up to the requirements that they require. So the next step is evaluating your own profile. So knowing what a university is looking for is an important factor to consider when evaluating your profile. And as I explained, the GRE, GPA, and language tests are pretty important for those requirements. Now, some of this information might be publicly available. Some universities do publish what their minimum requirements are for GRE, for example. However, admissions counselors have insights that might not be publicly available. For instance, Harvard does not publish a minimum requirement on their GRE, and they actually state on their website that they don't have a minimum requirement. However, we know as being in the industry that Harvard certainly does have a minimum requirement for their GRE. Students going there are going to need to be the best of the best, and that will have to reflect in their GRE score. So admissions counselors and study abroad consultants will have insights that are not publicly available. And for instance, Nomad, that's one of the things that we are able to do is that because we work with hundreds of schools in the US, we understand their requirements, so we can really help you choose safe, ambitious, and moderate school choices. And it's really important to understand how those choices will affect your job prospects after you graduate, because ultimately that's what you're coming to study for, is to get hired after you go to school. So just because you get into a higher ranked school doesn't necessarily mean that it is a great choice for you. There might be a school that is out there that's slightly lower ranked, but because of the local economy and the companies that are hiring around there, that's going to be a very good choice for you. Another tip is that it's really important to pick a safe school, or even two, that you have a high chance of being admitted. This is important for the visa process, as the consulates will look for admits to more than one university and really like to see 3 or more. So it can help you with that aspect. Even if you're not going to go there, just to have that admit in your pocket can be very helpful. So I just want to quickly go over like the actual application process. So this is a pretty long and somewhat complicated process, and there's a lot of forms to fill out. You need to collect all of your academic documents. You'll need to provide a resume. You'll need to write a statement of purpose, as well as lining up your recommenders to write your letters of recommendations, which most universities will require 3. So certainly some students do choose to do this process on their own, but many students determine that they want an expert's help that's done thousands of these applications and knows all the ins and outs that might occur, as well as the specific quirks of a certain university, and having that contact at that university that they can ask questions that might come up. So a lot of students do determine that they want help navigating the process, as well as the peace of mind that they're not going to make a mistake that might cause a denial. And we have seen that application filled out incorrectly does cause denials, and the student does not get an admit that they might have otherwise gotten. So that's one of the things Nomad can do, is that we do help a lot of our students through their applications and take care of most of the details so that no mistakes can occur. And in fact, we just helped one student that said that he had never imagined a process so easy when it came to applying to schools, because he had just heard how hard it was, and we just made it very easy for them. So if you were to go through us, you'll send us all of your documents. We'll take care of the details and help you apply. And then the next step is waiting. So due to our relationship, we can often get an admissions decision within days or weeks. However, we've had students that don't use us that come back to us months later and still have not heard anything from the school. So that is an advantage of using Nomad service, that we do have contact with the school, know the people in the admissions departments, and can get updates, and also have a much timelier application process. So I just wanted to quickly go over a couple common errors that many students might do through the application process. So one of the things that we have seen is that universities will reject a student because their statement of purpose has been submitted to another university by another person. So sometimes prospective students will talk to their friends and get some help and ask them, hey, I want to see your SOP. Mind if I use it to help me? And then they don't change anything on the SOP except their details. Well, universities have some technology that is able to identify if an SOP has been used before. So it's really important that you have an original SOP. Just as a note, you can send a similar SOP to all the universities you apply to. That's not necessarily an issue. It's when you are using one that has been applied by another student that's a problem. And then another thing for the SOP is there are about 12 to 15 things that a university will look for in that SOP. And so it's important to know what that information is and to include it in there. And so that's actually one of the things that Nomad can help with, is that we do know what those things are, and we can help edit your SOP to make sure that you have everything in there. I think one of the things too that students might not understand is that every university has a particular deadline. So for instance, with Spring 19, some of the deadlines are still open and certainly can still apply to Spring 19 schools. But many schools are already closed. They're no longer accepting any applicants. And it's really important to know what those deadlines are, because if some of them are very hard cut, and if you miss them, you'll miss out on being able to apply to that school for that intake. The next step is some students do not choose a safe school. And this is important. It's always important to have a backup, just in case the more ambitious schools that you apply to, if unfortunately it doesn't work out, you want to have a backup. At least you can get to the U.S. And this is also important for the next step, is that some students only get one admit. And as I mentioned, the consulates will look for multiple admits. This shows that many universities want you to attend their school, and it will bolster your chances to get that visa approval. We've also seen that some students don't think taking the GRE is important, or not taking it seriously. The GRE might be the number one thing that a university does look at when accepting students. So it's really important to take it seriously, spend time studying. A higher GRE score will significantly alter your chances to get into a school that you want to go to. And another aspect of not taking the GRE is actually the visa officers will really frown upon that. Even if you've gotten into one of the few schools that accepts an applicant without a GRE, going up against another student that has a GRE, the visa officer may favor the other student. So that's really important. And then going more into the visa officer, it's really important to prepare for that visa interview. There are certain questions that are asked, and if a wrong answer is given, it could cost a visa denial. And that's another service that Nomad can offer. We do help with visa training, and in fact, those that trained with us, over 80% got approvals that did it. And the majority of those that did not were, as I mentioned earlier, they did the mistake of not taking the GRE. And then lastly, as I mentioned before, going to a popular Indian school, there's a temptation to go to schools that everyone is being accepted into, but ultimately that's just the first step, and you still need to receive the visa, and you still want to have good opportunities for a job after you graduate. So it is very important to avoid these, and they're fairly well known, and that's something that Nomad could certainly help you with to steer you away from going to a school that might not be the best fit. And then the last error that a lot of students make is that they don't understand their funding options. And so that's actually what we have Avanse here to help explain with, is they are going to explain their own loan options and their products. So I will hand it back over to Deval. And Deval, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Nathan. Interesting insights. Now I'll take you through different aspects of education loan. and what Avanse, one of the leading NBFC player in India for education loans, has offered to the students in general as such. So, next slide, please. About Avanse, it's a fully dedicated and specialized new age education finance company. By this, I mean that we have pioneered what the students want in terms of flexible repayment options, in terms of service, in terms of sanction time, and we are one of the pioneers to understand what really the students who go abroad or studying in domestic want and what kind of products should be available to them. Licensed and registered by the Reserve Bank of India, RBI as a regulator, we are registered with them. Investment by IFC, which is an arm of World Bank, has invested in Avanse because of the cause, because of the education loan, because of fulfilling dreams of millions of students. They have invested in our company. We are part of a DHFL group, which is one of the largest private NBFC players in housing loan market, and we aim and aspire to be one of the largest player in education finance market to fulfill dreams and aspirations of students. Next slide, please. We at Avanse believe that if you deserve and if you want to create your future, if you have the talent, money, irrespective of what irrespective of what class or what kind of category you lie in, money should never slow you down. So we at Avanse have student as a fulcrum of our loans. Primary focus on what the student academics are, his future, what is his test score, and what is his ability to pay back our loan in future. We kind of fund for in India or abroad 100% loan without margin. It means that let's say the tuition fee is around 30 lakh rupees plus living expenses maybe around 10 lakh rupees. We may fund the entire 40 lakhs. Unlike some other players, we will not ask that 10% or 20% should be own contribution or should be from your savings. We have the ability to give you the loan sanction in one day. So let's say you are in a college and a course which is in our pre-approved list. You come in the morning to our branch with the documents. We do your credit checks. We kind of run the requirements as per our internal credit processes and systems, and it may just get sanctioned by end of the day. We offer loans with collateral, without collaterals. So let's say you are a deserving student, but you don't have a property, or your parents do not want to kind of mortgage the property. We will still fund you the entire tuition fee plus living expenses. Because as I said, the fulcrum of our loan sanctioning process is the student. We believe the student should be deserving, meritorious, and should have the ability to repay our loan through his education. Next slide, please. So our journey so far, we have, it's pride to say that we have fulfilled the aspirations and dreams of 11,000 plus students. We have approved 5,000 plus courses and 35 plus countries is what we have funded so far. It's a satisfying journey. In a period of 5 years, we have been able to achieve and fulfill dreams of so much number of students, but we aspire to be more. Our aspirations is to reach at least 1 lakh students and to fulfill their dreams and aspirations of 1 lakh students. Next slide, please. What is the advantage? Avanse advantages. One, flexible repayment. So let's say you are a deserving student, you say, look here, I don't want my parents to pay my EMI or simple interest. We can start your repayment of EMI after you complete the course plus 6 months of grace period for you to get a job and settle down. In that time, your parents may just pay a small amount of 2,000 rupees per month. Rest all the EMI starts after your course completion period. Customized solutions, we can structure your loans. So you may say, look here, I have certain percentage of property and I have certain kind of interest. Or you say, okay, I'm going to this country, but I want to start my repayment after 1 year. You can do that. You may say, I want to leave this much of percentage. You may say, I want to leave kind of an X percentage of loan, rest can be funded with from me, own sources. You can do that. After taking the funding, you can come back to us and say, look here, I want a top up loan. I'm going on an exchange to some different country. You can still fund that. Flexible repayment, faster loan sanctions, 100% education finance and structuring is a forte. Next slide, please. We provide doorstep service. So you give us a call, a person will come to your house, get the documents signed, and entire service can happen through your home. Except maybe during disbursement time, you may have once to come to our branch. Rest can all be provided to you at your house. No upper limit on the loan amount. So whatever will be the course, you say you want X amount, we don't have any upper limit on the loan amount. Processes are fairly transparent. At each stage, we inform you where your application is. After disbursement, we inform you what is the status of your loan. And whenever you want anything about your loan, is emailed to you or delivered to you. We also do pre-admission loans. So you say, okay, look here, I want to apply only once my loan is confirmed so that I know which university I can kind of afford to study. We can do that. You just give us GRE scores, we can give you a tentative, we can give you a sanction letter subject to getting an admission to a pre-approved college or university, and we can disburse the amount as per the university limits which we have. So even before your admission, you can actually have a sense of what you are eligible as far as the loan process is concerned. Next slide, please. The difference, as I said, competitive pricing. We can give you loan before your admission. There are added benefits and discounts depending on various factors. So there may be a discount period going on. There may be vaccination. There may be discount coupons. There may be your flight benefits, which are added as an overall package from Avanse. Score-based structure. So we can give you, let's say, your GRE score X. We can upfront tell you this is what you are eligible, subject to you getting an admission into a STEM, non-STEM MBA course as per our list. So we don't look as to what your co-borrower is earning, where is he working, or what criteria his income is, or how much his income is. If you deserve your academics and the course and university you are going are there with us, just see what you have different parameters like collateral or co-borrower, which a lot of players in the market see. So as I said, the fulcrum is the student. No deserving student should lose the opportunity to study abroad is our fundamental dream. Next slide, please. So this is to take you through the non-STEM courses also. Next slide, please. So even for non-STEM courses, it's very simple. It's a 3-step process. Fill up an online application form. Your appointment will be set up. You will be asked to submit the documents. The document list will be sent to you upfront. We will review your documents. And once your loan sanction is done, money is transferred to your bank. And even from your bank to do the forex to the university, we have tied up with vendors, which will help you to do the forex and make the payment to the fees to the universities. Next slide, please. These are few testimonials from, wouldn't be possible to have a lot of them because we have 11,000 live satisfied customers, but few testimonials which speak about Avance's service and the dreams and aspirations which we have been able to fulfill. So Lipin Roy, Venkat Subramaniam have good words to say for Avanse. Next slide, please. That brings me to the end of the presentation. As I said, we will support you if you dream. Aspire without boundaries, a motto. Happy to answer any questions if there are any. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Naval. Really appreciate all your great insights there. Yeah, and please, for those attending, if you need your help with presentation loans, to reach out to Avanse and see what they can do for you. So as Deval mentioned, we would like to open up the floor for questions. So there is a little question tab in your interface that you should be able to type your questions into. Sorry, one moment. Yes, so hey Deval, we have a question for you. Does Avanse give loans available for undergraduate or bachelor's courses? Hey, Deval?
One of the questions I see is, does Avanse finance for undergraduate courses? Yes, we do finance for undergraduate courses as well.
Great. Thank you.
We would be happy to take applications for those courses as well.
Great. And yeah, so Prince and Rajendra will give your information to Avanse to reach out to help answer a bit more on the undergraduate if you are interested in pursuing that option. And then Rajendra, I have a question on what university is best for undergraduate in finance. I can speak generally. I'll reach out to you specifically to help answer that. But generally, it's good to go to a university for undergrad that's just well known with a good reputation. Undergraduate program rankings are not quite as important as a graduate school. Undergrad is more of the overall reputation of the school. Is it good? And then different programs, especially for business, depending on the university, can be recruited pretty heavily from companies from certain cities. But for instance, I went to Indiana University for undergrad for business, and Chicago is about 4 hours away, and that's the third largest city in the U.S. So business school at Indiana has a great reputation as well as a pipeline into the companies that are in Chicago. I'd be happy to talk to you more about what might be a good fit for you when you want to reach out. And Prince, yes, Nomad can help with admission to undergraduate courses. Yes. So Rajendra, is that I think you might be asking, is collateral required for an undergraduate loan? Deval, maybe you can shed some light onto that, please.
Yes, Nathan, there is a collateral which will be required for an undergraduate course, as when it comes to a different master's course, we do have an option of unsecured and secured, but for an undergrad course, there will be a collateral which would be required.
All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions? All right, well, I really appreciate everyone's time, and thank you for attending the webinar. We will have this recording up later on our YouTube channel, and we'll also reach out to those that have joined the webinar, and for some of your specific questions. I think Rajendra is asking about interest rate, and I think we'll have Avanse reach out to you just to go through the process and give some more insights on that.
Right. So for interest rates for undergraduate, it depends upon the profile of the student as well. Which course is he applying for? Which country is he applying for? Which college will he be going to? So that depends upon all these things. So there's a fixed range which we can give you now. For an undergraduate course, the interest rate would start from 11.5% and would go on to a maximum of 13.25%. This is a range which we can offer. Obviously, after taking all the documents from the students, then a proper interest rate would be given to them.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that insight. All right, guys. Well, appreciate all your time, and thank you, Prince, for the kind words. We're happy to have you here, and thank you, Deval, for joining us and providing some great insight into education loans in Avanse.
Nathan.
Say it again. Say it again. I unmuted it. Say it again. Thank you all. It's been a lovely session.